Jake Martinez wiped the grease from his hands as he finished checking the last coolant line on the cargo ship Starwind. The work was routine but important, because a broken cooling system in deep space meant death for everyone aboard. He had been doing this job for 3 years now and knew every pipe and wire on the ship like his own heartbeat. The pay was decent, and the crew was good people, but sometimes Jake wondered if there was more to life than fixing things that other people broke. Captain Lisa Reed called over the ship radio that they would dock at Kepler 7 mining station in 2 hours. Jake packed his tools and headed to the crew quarters to clean up. The mining station was a welcome break from the endless black of space with its spinning lights and busy docks. They would stay for 3 days, while the miners loaded their ship with rare metals bound for the colonies near Jupiter. When the Starwind docked, Jake felt the familiar bump and heard the hiss of airlocks connecting. He grabbed his jacket and followed the other crew members onto the station. The place smelled like metal and recycled air, but it was better than being stuck in the ship. Jake planned to find a decent meal and maybe play some cards with the station workers. The station commander was a woman named Betty Walsh, who had been running Kepler 7 for 8 years. She had a 6-year-old daughter named Amy who loved to watch. The ships come and go. Jake often brought Amy small gifts from the different worlds they visited. This time he had a smooth blue stone from the beaches of New California that seemed to glow in certain light. Jake was showing Amy the stone when alarms started going off all over the station. Red lights flashed and people ran toward the main docks. Commander Walsh grabbed her daughter and told everyone to stay calm. Over the speakers, a voice said that an unknown ship had appeared near the station and was asking for help. Jake followed the crowd to the observation deck where he could see through the big windows into space. There, floating near the station, was a ship unlike anything he had ever seen. It looked like it was made of crystal or glass, and it sparkled with its own inner light. Parts of the ship seemed broken with dark cracks running through the crystal hull. Commander Walsh was talking on, her radio to the ship. The voice that came back was strange and musical, but the universal translator made the words clear. The being said her name was Velthara, and her ship was dying. She needed help for her baby who was very sick. Jake noticed that Amy had moved closer to the window and was staring at the crystal ship with wide eyes. Within an hour, the station was buzzing with activity. No one had ever seen an alien ship before, and now there was one right outside asking for help. Some people were scared and wanted to call for military ships from Earth. Others were excited and wanted to invite the aliens aboard. Commander Walsh decided to be careful but helpful. Velthara came aboard the station through a special airlock that the engineers quickly set up. Jake had never seen anything like her. She was tall and thin with skin that looked like it was made of living crystal. Her face was beautiful but alien with large eyes that seemed to hold starlight. She moved with grace, but Jake could see she was very worried about something. The alien mother carried what looked like a bundle of soft cloth, but Jake could see crystal edges peeking out. This had to be her baby. Velthara spoke through the translator, device explaining that her child was dying from something her people could not cure. She said she had been traveling for weeks looking for help and had heard stories about humans from other traders in space. Jake watched as the station doctor tried to examine the alien baby, but the equipment could not understand the crystal body. The baby made soft, chiming sounds that seemed sad and weak. Velthara held her child close, and Jake could see tears that looked like liquid diamonds rolling down her face. Then something strange happened. Amy broke away from her mother and walked up to Velthara. The little girl reached out and gently touched the alien baby, making soft cooing sounds like she did with her dolls. The baby's chiming got a little stronger, and Velthara looked surprised. Velthara watched Amy for a long time, then looked around at all the humans. Her large eyes stopped when she saw Jake. She had been observing how gentle he was with Amy, and how the little girl trusted him. Through the translator, Velthara asked to speak with Jake alone. They went to a quiet room where Velthara explained that her people were very advanced with technology, but they had lost something important over the centuries. Their children were dying more and more often, and no one knew why. She said that watching Amy interact with her baby gave her hope that humans might have what her people had lost. Then Velthara made an offer that took Jake's breath away. She said if he would help comfort her baby during its final days, she would give humanity the location of 3 perfect worlds rich with rare metals. She would also share her people's terraforming technology that could turn dead rocks into garden worlds. All Jake had to do was hold her baby and keep it company as it died. Jake looked at the crystal infant in Velthara's arms. The baby was beautiful, but clearly very sick. Its inner light was dim and its chiming was weak. Jake thought about his sister back on Earth who had struggled for months when her son was born too early. He remembered the long nights sitting in the hospital just holding the tiny boy and talking to him softly. Captain Reed and the other crew members thought Jake was crazy to get involved. They said this was a job for scientists and diplomats, not a maintenance worker. But Jake could see the desperate love in Velthara's eyes. It was the same look his sister had during those dark days in the hospital. Jake told Velthara he would help. He did not care about the planets or the technology. He just could not walk away from a mother trying to save her child. Velthara's crystal face showed something that might have been relief as she carefully placed her baby in Jake's arms for the first time. Jake held the crystal baby carefully in his arms, feeling its surprising warmth through the soft wrapping cloth. The infant was lighter than a human baby, but Jake could feel a gentle vibration like a quiet motor running inside the crystal body. He began to rock slowly back and forth the way he remembered doing with his nephew years ago. Something amazing happened within minutes. The baby's weak chiming sounds grew a little stronger, and the dim light inside its crystal skin began to glow, brighter. Velthara made a sound that the translator could not convert, but Jake understood it was surprise and hope mixed together. Jake spent the next several hours just holding the baby and talking to it softly. He told it about Earth and the blue oceans and green forests. He hummed old songs his mother used to sing and gently patted the crystal back when the baby seemed restless. The whole time Velthara watched with her large starlight eyes growing wider as her child continued to improve. By the next morning, the baby was much stronger. Its crystal skin sparkled with inner light, and its chiming had become a happy musical sound. The alien medical equipment that Velthara had brought began, showing readings that made her very excited. She tried to explain to Jake through the translator that her child's brain patterns were doing something they had never seen before. Captain Reed was amazed at what she saw when she came to check on Jake. The baby that had seemed ready to die yesterday was now moving its tiny crystal arms and making sounds that seemed almost like laughter. She called for the ship's medic, Paul Chen, to come take a look. Paul had studied alien biology in medical school, but had never seen a living alien before. He brought his scanning equipment and began taking readings while Jake continued to hold the baby. The scans showed that the infant's nervous system was responding to something in Jake's presence, but Paul could not figure out what it was. Word spread quickly through the station that the alien baby was getting better. Scientists and doctors began arriving on every ship that docked at Kepler 7. Within 3 days, a full research team had set up in the station's medical bay, led by a xenobiologist named Dr. Amanda Foster, who had traveled from Earth as soon as she heard the news. Dr. Foster brought equipment that could analyze both human and alien biology at the same time. She asked Jake to hold the baby while she ran her tests. The results were stunning. Jake's heartbeat and breathing were creating sound, waves that matched perfectly with the crystal structure of the baby's nervous system. But there was more. Jake's skin was producing very weak electrical fields that all humans make but never notice. These electrical fields were somehow feeding energy directly into the alien baby's brain. Dr. Foster explained that it was like Jake was a living battery. that could charge the alien child just by being close to it. Velthara was fascinated by these discoveries. Through longer conversations with the translator, she began to explain more about her people. The Zephyrians had once been very different, creatures who lived in family groups and touched each other often. But as they became more advanced with technology, they began to think that emotions and physical contact were primitive things to be avoided. Over many generations, the Zephyrians had built a society based on logic and efficiency. They stopped holding their children and began raising them in automated facilities. Parents would visit their offspring, but only to check on their education and development. Physical comfort was seen as weakness that would make children soft and unable to handle the demands of advanced civilization. But something had gone wrong. Zephyrian children began dying more often, and those who survived often had problems with their nervous systems. The death rate kept climbing, but no one could find a medical cause. Their best scientists worked for decades trying to solve the problem, but their technology could not fix what was broken. Jake learned that Velthara was not just any Zephyrian, but a member of their ruling council. She had lost 2 previous children to the mysterious illness and had been forbidden from having another baby. But she had broken their laws and secretly had the child she now called Shimmer because of the way its crystal skin reflected light. When Shimmer began showing the same symptoms that had killed her other children, Velthara decided to do something. Desperate. She had heard stories from space traders about humans who showed love to their young in strange ways. The traders said humans held their babies constantly and made nonsense sounds to them and seemed to waste enormous amounts of time on useless emotional displays. Velthara had stolen a ship and fled Zephyrian space to find humans who might be able to help her child. She had expected to find primitive creatures who might have some instinctive healing ability. Instead, she found something much more important. She found a species that still knew how to love. Dr. Foster's research showed that human children needed the same kind of bioelectric and sound comfort that Jake was giving to Shimmer. Human babies who did not get enough physical contact often failed to develop properly, but humans had never lost this knowledge because their society valued emotional connections between parents and children. The revelation changed everything. Velthara realized that her people had not evolved beyond the need for parental comfort. They had simply forgotten how important it was. The Zephyrian babies were not dying from disease, but from a kind of emotional starvation that their advanced medical technology could not detect or treat. Jake continued to spend hours each day with Shimmer, who was now completely healthy and growing larger every day. The baby had begun to recognize Jake's voice and would reach for him with tiny crystal hands whenever he entered the room. Velthara watched these interactions with wonder, as if she was seeing something magical. But the most amazing discovery was still to come. Shimmer had begun to make sounds that were different from normal Zephyrian baby chiming. Dr. Foster recorded these sounds and found that they contained both Zephyrian and human vocal patterns. Somehow the baby was learning to communicate in ways that bridged both species. Jake noticed that when he talked to Shimmer, the baby would make responsive sounds that seemed to answer his questions. When Velthara spoke in her native language, Shimmer would chime back in patterns that made the alien mother laugh with joy. It was as if the baby was becoming a living translator between 2 very different forms of life. The news of what was happening at Kepler 7 reached Earth and created enormous excitement in the scientific community. For the first time in human history, contact had been made with an intelligent alien species, and the contact was peaceful and beneficial. But it also created fear among military leaders who worried about the implications of such advanced alien technology. 3 weeks had passed since Jake first held Shimmer, and the baby had grown stronger every day. The crystal infant was now twice its original size, and its inner light had become so bright that it cast rainbow patterns on the walls of the medical bay. Jake had learned to understand many of Shimmer's different sounds, and the baby seemed to know exactly when Jake was coming before he even entered the room. Velthera had been watching Jake with her child, and something important was changing. In the alien mother, she was beginning to hold Shimmer more often and make the same gentle sounds that Jake used. Dr. Foster noted that when Velthera provided this kind of comfort, her baby's development improved even faster than when Jake alone was caring for it. During one of their daily conversations, Velthera told Jake something that changed everything he thought he knew about her offer. She was not just a desperate mother trying to save one sick child. She was a high-ranking member of the Zephyrian Council who had been sent on a secret mission to find a solution to her people's growing crisis. The 3 planets that Velthera had promised were not random worlds she had discovered. They were carefully chosen locations that the Zephyrian government had been studying for decades as possible sites for an incredible experiment. The Zephyrians wanted to create joint colonies where humans and Zephyrians could live and work together. Jake was shocked to learn that his people had been watched for years by alien scouts who studied human behavior from hidden observation posts. The Zephyrians had been particularly interested in human child-rearing practices, which seemed completely foreign to their logical minds. They had documented thousands of hours of humans holding their babies and singing to them and playing pointless games that served no obvious purpose. At first, the Zephyrian scientists had concluded that humans were simply primitive creatures who wasted time and energy on inefficient emotional behaviors. But as their own children continued to die in increasing numbers, some Zephyrian researchers began to wonder if there might be a connection between human child care methods and the fact that human babies almost always survive to adulthood. Velthera explained that she had volunteered for a dangerous mission to make direct contact with humans and test whether their nurturing behaviors could help Zephyrian children. Her own government did not know about her pregnancy or her plan to steal a ship and flee to human space. If her experiment failed, she would be exiled from Zephyrian society forever. But the experiment had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest hopes. Shimmer was not just healthy, but was developing abilities that no Zephyrian child had ever shown. The AI baby could understand both human speech and Zephyrian communication, and was beginning to translate between the 2 languages with perfect accuracy. Dr. Foster believed that Shimmer's brain was forming new neural pathways that combined the best features of both species. Jake learned that Velthera's real mission was to establish the first human Zephyrian nursery, where human caregivers would help raise Zephyrian babies while Zephyrian technology helped improve human lives. The 3 planets she had offered were intended to be the testing ground for this revolutionary partnership. This revelation came at a critical time because ships from Earth had begun arriving at Kepler 7. Military vessels were positioning themselves around the mining station, while diplomatic ships carried politicians and scientists who wanted to study the alien technology. Jake could see that the peaceful atmosphere of the past few weeks was about to change dramatically. Captain Reed warned Jake that Earth's colonial authority was sending Admiral Kate Sullivan with orders to secure any alien technology through negotiation, or force if necessary. The Admiral was known for her aggressive tactics and her belief that humans should expand through the galaxy by taking what they needed rather than asking for it. Jake was holding Shimmer when the first military transport docked at the station. Through the observation windows, he could see soldiers in combat armor taking positions around the alien ship. Velthera became very nervous and began making worried chiming sounds that Shimmer responded to with his own distressed noises. Dr. Foster tried to explain to the military commanders that the situation was delicate and that aggressive actions might destroy the opportunity for peaceful contact. But Admiral Sullivan was more interested in the terraforming technology that could transform dead worlds into garden planets than in maintaining good relations with aliens who might be planning an invasion. The tension increased when long-range sensors detected more Zephyrian ships approaching the station. Velthera explained that these were probably her people coming to arrest her for unauthorized contact with humans. Her government had strict laws against revealing Zephyrian technology to other species, and the penalty for breaking these laws was death. Jake found himself caught between two military forces that both wanted to control the situation. The humans saw the Zephyrians as a potential threat that needed to be contained, while the Zephyrians saw Velthara as a traitor who had endangered their entire civilization. Both sides were preparing for conflict, while Jake held a baby who represented the bridge between two species. Shimmer seemed to understand the growing tension and began making new sounds that neither Jake nor Velthara had heard before. Dr. Foster's equipment showed that the baby's brain activity was spiking in patterns that suggested intense concentration. It was as if Shimmer was trying to solve a complex problem that the adults could not figure out. Jake realized that he had become more than just a caregiver for an alien baby. He was now the only human who could truly communicate with the Zephyrians through his bond with Shimmer. The baby had learned to translate not just words, but emotions and intentions between the species. When Jake felt calm, Shimmer would project that calmness to Velthara, and she would relax. When Velthara was worried, Shimmer would alert Jake through changes in his chiming patterns. As the alien ships came closer, Admiral Sullivan ordered her forces to prepare for battle. She demanded that Velthara surrender her ship and all its technology to human authority. At the same time, the approaching Zephyrian vessels were broadcasting demands that Velthara return immediately to face judgment for her crimes against their society. Jake knew that both sides were making a terrible mistake. The humans saw the Zephyrians as invaders to be defeated, while the Zephyrians saw the humans as primitives who had corrupted one of their people. Neither side understood that they were destroying the chance for a partnership that could save both species, but Jake had an idea that was so simple it might actually work. Through his connection with Shimmer, he had learned that Zephyrian society was based on logic and evidence. If he could prove that human-Zephyrian cooperation produced better results than conflict, the logical Zephyrian mind would have to accept the truth. Jake asked Dr. Foster to help him set up a demonstration that would show both military forces what they would be destroying if they chose to fight. He wanted to prove that the bond between humans and Zephyrians could create something better than either species could achieve alone. Jake's plan was simple but dangerous. He would use his connection with Shimmer to communicate directly with the approaching Zephyrian ships, while Admiral Sullivan and her forces watched. If he could show both sides that cooperation was better than conflict, then maybe the two species could avoid a war that would help no one. Dr. Foster helped Jake set up equipment that would broadcast Shimmer's translated communications to both the human and Zephyrian fleets. The baby had grown so much that Jake now needed both arms to hold the crystal child who sparkled with intelligence and seemed to understand the importance of what was about to happen. The first test came when Jake spoke directly to Shimmer in front of Admiral Sullivan and her staff. Jake said he was worried about the safety of everyone on the station and asked Shimmer to help him talk to the Zephyrian ships. The baby responded with complex chiming patterns that Dr. Foster's computers translated into perfect Zephyrian language. Within minutes, the Zephyrian fleet was responding to Shimmer's communications with surprise and confusion. They had never heard of a Zephyrian child who could speak perfect human language or who seemed to understand both species equally well. The fleet commander demanded to know how this was possible and what had been done to create such an unusual infant. Jake realized this was his chance to explain everything. Through Shimmer, he told the Zephyrian commander about Velthara's desperate search for help and how human caregiving had saved her child's life. He described the scientific discoveries that Dr. Foster had made about bioelectric fields and sound frequencies, and how human nurturing provided exactly what Zephyrian babies needed to survive. The response from the alien fleet was immediate and intense. Multiple ships began transmitting at once as the news spread through their communication network. Jake could hear through Shimmer's translations that many of the Zephyrian crew members had lost children to the mysterious illness, and they were desperate to learn more about this potential cure. But Admiral Sullivan was not impressed by the alien response. She saw the growing excitement in the Zephyrian fleet as a sign that they were planning something dangerous. She ordered her ships to move into attack formation and demanded that Jake stop communicating with the aliens immediately. Jake refused to abandon his role as translator between the species. He could feel through Shimmer that the Zephyrians were not planning an attack, but were instead arguing among themselves about what to do with this incredible information. Some wanted to arrest Velthera and destroy all evidence of contact with humans, while others wanted to learn everything they could about human childcare methods. The situation became more complicated when 3 more Zephyrian ships arrived carrying families with sick children. These were not military vessels, but desperate parents who had heard rumors about a human who could heal Zephyrian babies. They had risked everything to travel to human space, hoping to save their dying children. Jake watched through the station windows as small crystal figures moved between the alien ships. Even from a distance, he could see that many of the Zephyrian babies were in the same critical condition that Shimmer had been in when Velthara first arrived. The sight of so many sick children made Jake's heart ache with the memory of his own nephew's struggle. Against Admiral Sullivan's direct orders, Jake asked Dr. Foster to help him contact the families with sick children. Using Shimmer as his translator, Jake told the alien parents that he would try to help their babies if they were willing to trust him. The response was immediate and overwhelming as parents begged him to save their children. Admiral Sullivan was furious at Jake's disobedience, but she was also fascinated by what she was seeing. The idea that humans possessed a natural ability that an advanced alien species desperately needed was something that could change humanity's position in the galaxy forever. Instead of being primitive creatures struggling to survive, humans might actually be the key to solving problems that alien technology could not handle. The first alien family was allowed to bring their dying baby aboard the station under heavy guard. Jake took the crystal infant in his arms and began the same gentle care that had saved Shimmer. Within hours, the baby was showing signs of improvement, and by the next day it was healthy and strong. Word of the miracle spread quickly, and more alien families requested help. Soon, Jake was working around the clock with a team of human volunteers who had learned his techniques. Captain Reed found herself organizing a nursery operation as her crew members took turns caring for alien babies while their parents watched in amazement. The most surprising volunteer was Nick Torres, the ship's engineer who had initially been skeptical about getting involved with aliens. When he held his first Zephyrian baby and saw its inner light grow brighter, Nick understood that he was witnessing something more important than politics or military strategy. He was helping to save innocent lives, and that was something worth risking everything for. But the situation was still dangerous because not all the Zephyrians supported what was happening. The military ships in their fleet were under orders to prevent any technology transfer to humans, and they saw the nursery operation as a violation of their most sacred laws. Some of the alien commanders were preparing to use force to stop the cooperation between species. Jake realized that Shimmer had become something unique in the galaxy. The baby was the first being who truly belonged to both species and could understand the thoughts and feelings of humans and Zephyrians equally. Well, through his bond with the crystal child, Jake had become the first human capable of deep communication with an alien mind. This special connection allowed Jake to understand that the Zephyrians were not evil or aggressive, but were simply afraid. Their society had been built on the idea that they were the most advanced species in the galaxy, and the discovery that they needed help from primitive humans challenged everything they believed about themselves. Jake began using Shimmer to share human emotions and memories with the Zephyrian commanders. He showed them images of human parents caring for their children and explained how love and physical comfort were not signs of weakness, but sources of strength that made both parents and children stronger. The breakthrough came when one of the Zephyrian military commanders revealed that he had lost 3 children to the mysterious illness. Through Shimmer's translation, Jake could feel the alien's grief and desperate hope. The commander asked quietly if there was any chance that human care could help Zephyrian children who had already died. Jake had to explain gently that death was final for both species, but that the living children could be saved if humans and Zephyrians worked together. He proposed that instead of fighting over technology and territory, the 2 species could create something entirely new. They could build a civilization where human emotional intelligence combined with Zephyrian logical thinking to solve problems that neither species could handle alone. Admiral Sullivan realized that Jake had discovered something more valuable than any weapon or territory. He had found a way to make humanity indispensable to a species that was far more advanced in every other way. The question now was whether both species would be wise enough to choose cooperation over the fear and suspicion that had nearly led them to war. The final crisis came when the most powerful Zephyrian warship in the fleet opened fire on one of the family vessels that had brought sick children to the station. The military commander of that ship believed that contact with humans was corrupting Zephyrian society and decided to end the experiment by destroying everyone involved. Jake felt Shimmer's distress as the baby sensed the fear and pain of the Zephyrian children on the attacked ship. The crystal infant began making sounds that Jake had never heard before, and Dr. Foster's equipment showed brain activity patterns that seemed impossible. Shimmer was somehow trying to communicate with every Zephyrian in the fleet at the same time. Admiral Sullivan ordered her ships to defend the alien families, but Jake knew that a battle between the fleets would destroy everything they had worked to build. Through his connection with Shimmer, he could feel the confusion and conflict in the minds of the Zephyrian crews as they were forced to choose between following orders and protecting innocent children. That was when Jake made the most important decision of his life. He asked Velthara to help him take Shimmer directly to the Zephyrian command ship, where he could speak to their military leader face to face. It was incredibly dangerous because the alien commander might simply kill them both, but Jake believed it was the only way to prevent a war that would doom children of both species. Velthara was terrified of returning to her own people, who considered her a traitor, but she agreed to help Jake because she had seen what human courage could accomplish. Together, they took a small shuttle from the station toward the largest Zephyrian warship, while weapons from both fleets tracked their movement through space. The alien commander agreed to let them come aboard, but only because he was curious about the human who had caused so much disruption in Zephyrian society. Jake found himself standing in a crystal chamber, surrounded by tall alien figures whose starlight eyes showed no emotion or sympathy. He was holding Shimmer, who had become quiet and still, as if the baby understood the importance of this moment. Jake began to speak through Shimmer's translations, but he quickly realized that words alone would not be enough to change minds that had been closed by centuries of rigid thinking. Instead, he did something that no human had ever done before. He opened his heart and mind completely to the alien consciousness and let them feel what it meant to love a child more than your own life. Through Shimmer's unique abilities, Jake shared his memories of holding his sister's premature son during those long nights in the hospital. He showed the Zephyrians what it felt like to rock a crying baby until it fell asleep and to sing silly songs that had no purpose except to make a child smile. He let them experience the fierce protective instinct that made parents willing to sacrifice everything for their young. The effect on the Zephyrian commanders was immediate and overwhelming. Many of them began to make sounds that the translator could not convert, but Jake understood through Shimmer that they were expressions of grief and recognition. These logical beings were remembering emotions they had buried so deep that they had forgotten they ever existed. The military commander who had ordered the attack on the family ship was the most affected by Jake's emotional sharing. Through Shimmer, Jake learned that this alien had lost 4 children over the years and had convinced himself that grief was a weakness that prevented clear thinking. Now he was feeling the full weight of his losses and understanding that his logical approach to parenting had actually caused the deaths he was trying to prevent. But the most powerful moment came when Shimmer began to project its own feelings to the assembled Zephyrians. The baby showed them what it was like to be held and comforted by someone who cared more about your happiness than their own convenience. Shimmer shared the security and love that came from knowing that someone would always be there to protect you no matter what happened. One by one, the Zephyrian commanders began to understand what their society had lost in its pursuit of logical perfection. They had eliminated the emotional connections that gave life meaning, and in doing so, they had condemned their children to die from a kind of starvation that no medical technology could cure. The breakthrough came when the fleet commander asked Jake if he would be willing to teach Zephyrian parents how to care for their children the way humans did. Jake replied that he would be honored to help, but that it would require both species to change the way they thought about strength and weakness. Jake proposed the creation of joint nursery stations throughout Zephyrian space, where human caregivers would work with alien parents to raise healthy children. In exchange, the Zephyrians would share their terraforming technology and help humans establish colonies on the 3 worlds that Velthara had originally offered. But Jake's most important proposal was that children like Shimmer, who belonged to both species, should be raised together to become bridges between human and Zephyrian civilization. These hybrid children would grow up understanding both logical thinking and emotional intelligence, and could help both species learn from each other. The Zephyrian Council agreed to Jake's proposals, but they wanted him to become the first human nursery coordinator for their territories. This meant leaving his job as a maintenance worker and dedicating his life to caring for alien children while teaching their parents how to love. Jake accepted the position without hesitation because he had found something more important than fixing broken machines. He had discovered that his ability to nurture and comfort others was exactly what the galaxy needed to prevent conflicts between species who were too different to understand each other. The story ended 6 months later with Jake living on the first joint human Zephyrian colony world with Velthara and Shimmer, who had become like his own child. His sister had brought her son from Earth to benefit from advanced Zephyrian medical care while she learned to help care for alien babies. Jake spent his days teaching groups of human volunteers how to comfort Zephyrian infants while alien parents learned to express emotions they had forgotten for centuries. The 3 promised worlds were being transformed into garden planets, where human families and Zephyrian clans worked together to build a new kind of civilization. Shimmer had grown into a remarkable child who could translate not just languages, but entire ways of thinking between species. The Crystal Child had dozens of human and Zephyrian siblings who were being raised together in an environment where logical analysis and emotional wisdom were both valued equally. Jake often thought about that first day when Velthara had made her unbelievable offer. She had asked him to comfort her dying baby, and in return promised him worlds and technology beyond imagination. But the real gift had been much simpler and more precious. She had shown him that the most ordinary human ability to love and nurture others was actually the most extraordinary power in the universe.